Venezuela asserted its contribution to global energy balance with the signing of the contract between the state-owned oil company PDVSA and the U.S. company Chevron. OPEC Plus is confirmed to hold a meeting on December 4th to evaluate the results of the oil cuts and define a new action plan. And a joint committee of the Ethiopian government and Tigray forces agreed to outline disarmament plans as part of a peace agreement. Hello and welcome to teleSUR English. I am Estefania Bravo from the headquarters of Quito in Ecuador. This is from the south. Venezuela asserted its contribution to global energy balance with the signing of the contract between the state-owned oil company PDVSA and the U.S. company Chevron. The Minister of Petroleum, Tarek El Aissami, the President of Chevron in the country, Javier La Rosa, and the head of PDVSA, Asdrubal Chavez, met in Caracas. They signed contracts that allow the American oil company to continue operating and producing in Venezuela. El Aissami highlighted the importance of the agreement and the role of the Caribbean country plays in the global energy balance equation.
We have expressed that Venezuela has always been open to foreign investment, and the oil, chemical and gas sector are proof of this, and we are also part of an irreplaceable variable in what we could call an equation for the world energy balance.
El Aissami stated that the purpose of signing the contracts with Chevron is to continue with the productive activities in the energy sector in the country.
These contracts are aimed at continuing with the productive and development activities in this energy sector. These contracts are framed within our constitution and the Venezuelan laws that govern the oil activity in the country.
President of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, held a meeting with representatives of the so-called Democratic Alliance as part of the dialogues with the country's opposition. The meeting took place at the Miraflores Palace in the city of Caracas this Friday with several representatives of the opposition who are members of the current National Assembly. This meeting is framed in the context of the peace dialogue with the Venezuelan opposition sector with the purpose of unifying criteria that contribute to the economic and social growth of the Caribbean nation. Peace delegations of the ELN and the Colombian government have invited the National Convention of Peasants to appoint representative delegates to join the peace talks being held in Caracas, Venezuela. The head of the Colombian government delegation to the peace process with the ELN, Oti Patiño, greeted the National Peasant Convention in session in Bogotá and wished the great success in the deliberation of the agreements. Patiño stressed that the Colombian government and the ELN are aware that the armed conflict has not generated solutions and has increased violence, dispossession, and land concentration.
We want to invite delegates from this National Peasants Convention to attend when possible so that we may agree on these interviews at the negotiating table.
The representative of the ELN delegation, Pablo Beltrán, urged the peasantry to join the changes that the country needs.
Today, the Colombian population, and in particular the peasantry, is excluded, impoverished, in the territories are depredated. We as a nation have a subordination to the United States, and when it is said that we have to make big changes, the big changes are to change the model. It is a predatory neoliberal model that creates inequalities, and of course we have to change the regime that is like the guard dog of that model. So with this, we are invited to continue being companions and partners in these changes.
In Colombia, the National Peasants Convention is being held at Bogotá's National University. It started December 1st and it will wrap up on December 4th. The event gathers more than 2,500 peasants from various regional organizations who are discussing the situation of the countryside, policies proposed by the current government, and neglected historical needs.
La paz empieza de abajo.
Peace starts from the bottom up to where power sits. If it starts from the top downwards, peace is impossible. We have to listen, and I believe that we're doing it. And I say that we're doing it because I am part of the government, because we elected the government. It is about listening to those who have never been listened before. It is about listening to the voiceless, listening to the ones who plant the crops. If the agrarian reform is to improve, I believe we can make good progress. This is the way for peasants to change the conflict and the war. The countryside has every chance to become Colombian food world power.
And after the approving Congress approved to pass a third vacancy motion against President Pedro Castillo, he affirmed he will complete his constitutional term in 2026. During an event in the city of Lima, the head of state rejected the actions of some political sectors to undermine his mandate. The president's announcement comes after the Congress voted in favor of accepting a request for impeachment against him on Thursday. We're taking our first break now. Join us again after this, but also don't forget to follow us on our TikTok account at teleSUR English. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Next upcoming OPEC Plus meeting is confirmed for December 4th. At this meeting, the result of the oil cuts will be evaluated and a new action plan will be defined. Analysts indicate that black gold is facing a set of contradictory and uncertain factors within the framework of the world economy, with a sharp price decrease. In this respect, the organization's authorities highlighted that the multilateral organization is very focused on the demanding of emerging markets. And despite Moscow's warnings, the European Union agreed on Friday to a maximum price of $60 for Russian oil. The measure establishes that the G7 countries will prohibit their insurance and transport companies from facilitating shipments of Russian crude oil to third countries if they are sold above the established price. Diplomats from the European bloc indicated that the cap will be reviewed every 2 months and that the aim is to set the rate at a level that is at least 5% below the market price. In the United Kingdom, recent studies reveal that constant prices increases in recent months have set general inflation at the highest rate in 45 years. According to British media reports, based on data published by a researcher from the Community Food Project in the town of Townbridge, this is the highest figure since records began in 2005. The new census data suggests that 6 of the most deprived communities are in Wales, specifically in Cardiff, the capital, which, despite being described as a prosperous area, has been hit by poverty to the extent that there are reports of families resorting to pets' food. On Friday, several Ukrainian embassies abroad received bloody packages containing animal parts, according to the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Oleg Nikolenko said the packages were sent to embassies in Hungary, the Netherlands, Poland, Croatia, and Italy, to general consulates in Naples and Krakow, and the consulate of Brno. Foreign Minister Dumitru Kuleba has ordered all embassies and consulates concerned to be placed under heightened security. Russia progresses in its diplomatic efforts to organize a meeting between Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan. The Russian Deputy Foreign Minister and Special Representative for the Middle East and African countries, Mikhail Botanov, pointed out that Moscow is not imposing mediation on Ankara and Damascus, and assured that the progress depends on the will of the parties involved. In this regard, the Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov stressed the importance of the negotiations between the two leaders to normalize the conflict and establish peace in Syria. Damascus has repeatedly disapproved Turkish military presence in the country, calling it illegitimate. And the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations reported that the World Food Price Index falls in November. The FAO cereal price index was down 1.3% from the previous month, but still up 6.3% from its year-ago value. World wheat and maize prices declined in November by 2.8% and 1.7% respectively, influenced in part in the extension of the Black Sea Grains Initiative. In contrast, international rice prices rose by 2.3%. The FAO vegetable oil price index increased by 2.3% in November, ending 7 consecutive months of decline. The dairy price index declined 1.2% from October, with world quotations for butter, skimmed milk, and whole milk powder falling and lower part import demand, while those for cheese increased, partly due to lower export availability from major Western European producing countries.
As a result of the high prices, the global food import bill is projected to reach a record high level of $2 trillion. The increase in the cost of food imports is putting a lot of fiscal pressure on government budgets and causing balance of payment problems. And high food prices and the overall cost of living crisis have serious implications on food security and nutrition, particularly for the vulnerable countries and populations who spend a large share of their income on food.
In Hawaii, the United States, the Mauna Loa volcano continues to erupt, and its lava nears a road that connects the western sector with the rest of the island. Considered the largest volcano in the world, the Mauna Loa threatens the connection between the east and the west of the islands, and experts say that nothing can be done to prevent the advance of its fluids. After 38 years of inactivity, the volcano has been active since Sunday, sweeping large quantities of land, volcano ash, and rocks. Two people were killed and a firefighter is missing after heavy rains caused flooding and landslides in Santa Catarina state in southern Brazil. In Santa Catarina, one man died in a landslide that destroyed his home in the city of Brusque, and another was fatally electrocuted while crossing a flooded street in Paloca, a town next to the state capital, Florianopolis. Meanwhile, firefighter went missing when his boat sank off the coast of the seaside resort in Naviges in Santa Catarina. We're taking our last break now. Join us again after this, but also don't forget to follow me on my Twitter account at @teleSUR. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. More news now. A joint committee of the Ethiopian government and Tigray forces agreed to outline disarmament plans as part of peace agreements. According to the Ethiopian government's Twitter account, the committee started to work on Wednesday, November 30th. It is the first time both sides have officially held talks inside Ethiopia since the fighting began. The peace agreement says Tigray forces will be disarmed within 30 days of the signing, and Ethiopian security forces will take full control of all federal facilities, installations, and major infrastructure within the Tigray region. And the head of the World Health Organization welcomed the peace agreements reached between the government and the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front and urged the parties to commit themselves to peace and to resolve the grave reflects of the war as quickly as possible.
We welcome peace. The agreement is important, and I hope all parties will continue to commit to peace. And at the same time, the agreement should be implemented in full. And as Mike said, of course, there are some food aid and medicine being delivered, but unfettered access is what we expect because the need is massive. The only solution to this conflict is through political dialogue that's happening now and through peaceful settlement. We encourage that, but civilians should be at the center. Even when there is conflict, even in the middle of war, food aid and medical supplies should be delivered, and it should not be even a condition and should not be attached with the political or military dialogue which is happening.
The United Nations mission in South Sudan, in partnership with the United Nations Development Program, recently held a workshop for new parliamentaries on strengthening anti-corruption oversight.
The role of Parliament in obviously in undertaking any reform of anti-corruption is critical. Political will is key for reforms and for subsequent implementation. So it's very important to convince the new parliament. Many of the parliamentarians have not received this previous and any training on anti-corruption. They are parliamentarians for the first time. And South Sudan obviously have a peace agreement to implement, and the revitalized agreement specifies certain actions to be taken to counter corruption, to enhance good governance and the rule of law.
This is a very, very important workshop which looks at the role of the Parliament, the Transitional National Legislative Assembly, together with the anti-corruption. And the intention of this workshop is to give the members of Parliament an opportunity to look at one of their functions. Of course, the function of the Parliament is to look at first, they are representatives of the people. They are also legislators, and also they play the role of the oversight.
The Palestinian government condemned the killing of a young man by the Israeli occupation forces in the town of Uwara. The chancellor of the country rejected the murder of the 22-year-old Palestinian Ammar Miflif. The authorities held the Israeli government responsible for the expansion of attacks and the assassinations against the Palestinian population. In this context, the officials urged the international community to take the corresponding measures in the context of the increasing violence by the forces of the Tel Aviv regime against Palestinian citizens. Friday saw the last match of this group stage in Group H of FIFA World Cup Qatar 2022. South Korea beat Portugal 2-1 and Uruguay defeated Ghana 2-0. This way, the Asian and the European team will be in the next round. South Korea advanced to the next round after beating Portugal 2-1 and for having scored 2 more goals than Uruguay in the World Cup. This way, they will face the first place of Group G. The Portuguese team took the lead with a goal by Ricardo Horta at minute 5, and the Asians came back with goals by Kim Yong-woong at minute 27 and Hwang Hee-chan at minute 91. A rather tense match for the Uruguayan national team was the one against Ghana on Friday, December 2nd at the Al Janoub Stadium, although they were out of the World Cup despite beating the Africans 2-0 with goals by Georgian and De Araceta. The Celestes lost by 1 goal, considering that they needed the Koreans to lose against Portugal or else win by 2 goals less than the difference Uruguay got against Ghana, which did not happen with a 2-1 result in favor of the Asians. And fans left Lusail Stadium in Doha after Cameroon stunned Brazil but failed to qualify for the knockout stages of the World Cup. Switzerland's 3-2 over Serbia at the same time means the Swiss advances from Group G along with already qualified Brazil. And Switzerland also qualified for the World Cup 5th final on Friday after a 3-2 victory over Serbia in a close match, secured the 2nd place of Group G. And just as the hearts of millions of fans live the emotions of the Qatar 2022 World Cup, teleSUR joins the sporting event with From the Field, a show that brings news, analysis, reviews, and more to our audience. Don't miss it. Our show airs at 1 p.m. local time Caracas and 12 p.m. New York. Remember, From the Field, only on teleSUR. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net.